Welcome everyone to our webinar, Detecting Threats in a World of Mega Breaches. I'm always reminded of a quote by Jay-Z at this time that you could be anywhere else in the world, but you chose to be with us. So we thank you for that. So let's jump straight into it. I'm Javvad Malik. I'm the security advocate here at AlienVault, which is, and my colleague Andy is our SE team lead, who will be picking up after me. So we're doing kind of like a tag team routine. So the threat landscape. Let's talk about it. If you tune into the news at any time, or radio, print media, mainstream media, not just tech publications, there's this overwhelming sort of like factoid of that. The threat landscape is escalating. Everyone is being targeted, and it's not just if you're a large bank anymore. It's not just if you're a government anymore. You could be a company of any size. You could be a small clinic. You could be a business that just does some transaction, a B2B type company. You could be a graphics design studio. You could be pretty much anything. And there are attacks that will land in you. And these don't even necessarily mean to be targeted. A lot of them are just like scattergun approach, but some of them are targeted. It's not to attack the company you're in, but the company that you're trading with, so trying to use it as a way through, or just to gain access to the records you hold on your customers or your partners. So, this is all a very grim picture, and sometimes it's easy to become quite sort of like, resigned to the fate that no matter what you do, like people seem to be getting attacked all the time. But what's the answer? And the answer, clearly, we need more logs. And I say clearly because it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek comment. But, we need more logs. I mean, why not? The answer is always in the log somewhere. So let's pull in logs from more devices, buy more and more diverse monitoring technologies, invest in analytics, algorithms, and most importantly, artificial intelligence, so that you can make bad decisions at lightning fast speed. Now, the problem with this approach is generally when you tackle it in an unstructured manner, is you end up with this masses of data coming in. So you get kind of like a data overload. You need more staff, and it creates more silos across your business. So let's delve into this a bit. So you can buy a new fancy monitoring tool, but the question is, who's going to run it? Will you train up your staff to use it? Will you hire new staff? Will you outsource it to a third party? So it reminds me of many years ago, I used to work for a bank, and we implemented an IDS system. It was great because we were shown by the consultant who installed it for us that here your IDS logs coming in. And I was in the security operations team, and we were looking at it, and none of us really understood what to do with that. So, and I think it's a good illustration of the fact that you can have the right tools, you can have the information coming in, but you also need the skills there to be able to interpret it or know when something is actually bad, or what to do when you do find something there. Data overload is the other big challenge. I mean, you have monitoring or some logging in most devices now. So if you turn on everything, you end up with a great deal of logs. So, that's where, things like algorithms and machine learning, or, just a bit more contextual information can help you pare it down a bit. But, for most companies, combined with the skills issues and the amount of data that's coming in, it sometimes is a challenge. The other issue, is that, and is like business silos. You have businesses that operate, and each division has got their own objective that they're trying to meet. So, and this isn't just for the largest of our companies. We see a lot of mid-sized enterprises also have this similar challenges. you know, you get more tools in, but it's maybe not necessarily spread across the entire company. It only addresses a certain area. So, you know, we end up with silos being created. And I love this poster by Transport for London. It's about cycle safety, but, you know, it just shows that on the side of the truck over here, all of these bikes are in the driver's blind spot. And I think that's what happens a lot in enterprises when with the risks that we face, a lot of risks end up in the blind spot. It's not that they're not there. It's not that we don't have the logs. It's not that we don't have the tools. It's just they end up in these blind spots in the company. And that's why, you know, you see so many times a company will get a breach or breached, and you look back and you think, well, that was a really simple thing to detect. Why didn't they detect it? Or that should have been pretty obvious. Why didn't they spot it? So how do we address the challenges? There's a few steps we can take to address the challenges, and let's go through them. Threat modeling. Threat modeling, risk assessment, you know, building a picture of exactly what's relevant to your company. It's very easy to pick up a report these days from sort of like an incident response perspective, or a company, they share their findings. But is that relevant to yours? And I love this model of like Batman's threat model here. Like, you know, he's got the different threats and the vectors that they come in and what assets he's trying to protect. And I think it's important for companies to understand what's relevant to them and build their defense accordingly. One good way I'd like to approach it is like taking an attacker-centric model. So you work out who your primary attackers are. So if you're like in doing some research and maybe your company uses animals, then, you know, hacktivists or you know, animal rights groups will be one of your primary attackers. And then from there you can build out, well, okay, what are the primary methods they use, what are the tools they use, what are the techniques, and build your defenses accordingly. Risk articulation is very important. I think we see it a lot of times in companies that they identify the risk, but then the company just accepts the risk, or they put it on their risk register and say that's the risk sorted out. So, you know, being good at articulating the risk, understanding it from a business context is very important. So that could be not just spoken, but how it's written, how it's structured, and using well-structured arguments to come to an informed decision. Context. There's that word again, context. We hear it a lot. So what do we mean by context? It's not necessarily increasing the amount of logs, but better understanding the data that you do have. So the best way is to start small, on a small scale, work out what that is, and then expand it. So some of the things that could help you add context to the data that's coming in and help you make better decisions, things like having your assets, knowing what your assets are, knowing what the value is. So when a database gets, you know, say compromised, do you know upfront what the value of that database is to your company? Is it something that's got all your critical information on? Is it something that you need to inform your customers about? You know, does it fall under GDPR or something? Or is it something that's used for marketing purposes? Is it something else? You know, knowing these things up front really helps you understand like where to focus your energy in the event of an incident, and makes you the better decisions. Vulnerabilities. Understanding where your vulnerabilities really helps add a lot of context. A lot of times we'll get a vulnerability scanner, point it at some assets, scan it, and come back with a 50-page list and say, well, that's interesting. But do you know where your vulnerabilities lie? And this is where building upon knowing where your assets are really helps. So where do your vulnerabilities lie? Don't try to fix all of them. Fix the important ones, monitor the other ones, and fix where needed or where you see some attacks coming in. Behavioral analysis. Can you tell if something's right or wrong? Can you spot the faker in this bodybuilding lineup? You it's very easy. We can laugh at something like this and say, yes, it's clear. But do we know our own networks well enough to make that distinction when something looks a bit untoward? Finally, the one thing that really adds a lot of context is threat intelligence, knowing that, what are the threat actors out there, what are their common techniques, tools, procedures, how are they getting into companies and what are their motives. If you've done your threat modeling earlier and you've taken an attacker-centric approach to that, then you start overlaying everything and it builds up a really rich picture of what you should do, how you should do it. Processes and routines, very important. And this is, so a lot of companies, if you're in that stage where you're building out a SOC or a SOC type capability, or even if you're not calling it a SOC, you have this security operations team, having a routine is really important. Having a daily, what are you doing on a daily basis? What alarms are you reviewing? What logs are you reviewing on a weekly basis, on an annual basis, quarterly basis, everything. So having that routine really helps you build up that consistency in monitoring for stuff. So it's not like 6 months later where, Brian Krebs posts on his website, hey, your company was breached. But it also helps you build up that behavioral understanding of what does normal actually look like. And the human brain is really good at figuring out patterns and anomalies really well if you do it on a regular basis. But don't be too rigid in your approach. This is the flip side of having a routine. Having a routine is important, but don't be so rigid that you don't adapt it when technologies change or your business changes or your threat landscape changes. Response, if there's one thing I think I can't emphasize enough is have a response plan. And the response plan encompasses so many different things. It's not just like the technical recovery of those assets, but think about it. If you're hosting some of your data in the cloud, what are your relationships with that cloud provider like? How are you going to get in touch with them? What part are they responsible for? Can they quarantine certain areas for you? Do you have a media response plan? In this day and age, if there's a breach, customers expect to be notified clearly and quickly. They want to know how it affects them, what you're doing to help them out, who they should get in touch with if they have an issue. So having this plan all up front really helps, and more of this gets rolled into the security team's responsibilities. Ultimately, you want to move into this continuous response cycle where you detect things, you respond, you have time to analyze, and you distill that intelligence throughout. Threat sharing, one of my favorite topics. Well, I think it's been the industry's favorite topic for the last couple of years, but we're actually getting to a very good and mature stage now where a lot of companies are now using threat intelligence quite usefully and effectively. Threat sharing, and it can be something really informal, as in in your area or in your industry, you're just sharing some details with each other. So you see something strange on your network and you're not quite sure, so you just ask your closed community or open community, whatever it is, have you seen something like this? And that can really shorten your response cycle. So rather than 10 different companies spending 3 days researching one threat, you only need to do it once, and you can share that amongst everyone else. Say, hey, this is what we've seen. These are the kind of phishing emails we're seeing, or these are the kind of network probes we're seeing. You might want to blacklist these sites or these activities, and that can be really, really fundamental in leveraging the capabilities that are out there, because we see a lot of the bad guys out there are sharing a lot of their tools, their techniques. They're saying, hey, this worked really well. Do you want to buy it or hire my bot, or do you want to, here's my code, you can share it and use it. And with us doing more and more threat sharing, we can actually turn the tables and leverage those capabilities ourselves, because in most cases, for most companies, you know, you're not going to be attacked with a true 0 day. It's going to be something that's like been seen out there, and someone's got some visibility into that. So with that, I am going to hand over to my esteemed colleague, Andy, so who can talk you through some of the more technical details. But over to you, Andy.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Just give me a moment here. If I'm correct, you should be seeing now my screen. Javvad, can you just confirm that quick for me, please?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Good, then everybody else should be ready. So Javvad actually brought up a lot of points that I have on my day-to-day discussion with partners, customers, and also just with previous colleagues in other IT and security companies. And it's like, how do we tackle all this? How do I make my plan? How do I do this routine? How do I get those data under control? And I always say, like, a SIM is only as good as its correlation rules at the end. And correlation rules are based on the idea that you have a technology that you collect the data with, you have a tool that is applying the rules, but you have also an intelligence and an intelligence teams against it to do that. And you will see throughout the next few minutes more information about what we call OTX, the Open Threat Exchange, which is a very important part because it's our open threat sharing platform, and this platform helps our threat researchers to share with other organizations, but also to collect valuable data and build correlation rules that help you to get an overview. What you're seeing today on the screen, this is actually USM Anywhere, our product that is actually called Anywhere because we can use it anywhere, in the cloud, on-prem, or hybrid. You can install it on Hyper-V, VMware, or you can actually install it in Azure or in AWS. And we can monitor, for example, your Office 365, Gmail, and so on. But what happens when you install it the first time, and how do I get actually this control, this understanding, what is my problem, where's my risk? And it starts really simply off, if I just go back here, doing an asset discovery. The first thing, and this dashboard is really based on giving you a very quick idea what is happening on a day-to-day, on a monthly, and a yearly basis on my screen. I set this up for a screenshot back to beginning of December. So you see all the operating systems that we have, and you see also the vulnerabilities. Currently, at that stage on the 1st of December, we had an extremely level of high-risk situations. We had some mediums and some low. Now, this is a slightly extreme view, but I see that very often when we start with customers with the product, that see similar pictures, maybe more kind of a 30% high, 30% medium, and then 60-ish% on low. But it will always look like this. Now, we identified I have vulnerabilities. I identified I have operating systems, and here I can see my day-to-day drama happening. But more importantly is, if I want to monitor something like this and I group those now out, those assets, I can identify what is important. I have a PCI DSS group, for example, which is a high-profile group to me because I have to focus on it. I may have an audit coming up soon. So if I look into this, and I see still here in this month, December till now, that looks not that healthy. If I go back now and say, like, okay, we worked with this data, actually, and I just bring it back to the last 30 days. So I have a look, and I can see actually the trend is changing. We have only low-level alerts at the moment, so very vulnerabilities. It's maybe down to the fact that we just moved some assets out of the group because they didn't belong to it. So let's just extend it to all assets again. And more importantly, I see, okay, this is still the same. So we did a really good job. Now, if you achieve this, that you just have 100% of low vulnerability situations, you're the winner. Now, I have still 3 assets that are just giving me really pain because they have the most vulnerabilities. So if I click into it, and this helps you go through it, it brings me straight away a little bit more information. So this is a painful asset to me because it gives me a lot of events and a lot of alarms. So I just go into the full details, and I can just have a quick overview, see what's going on. Interesting enough is, we're just talking about alarms. So I have here suspicious behavior. This is not a high-level alarm, and if we would go into the alarm view directly, you would see this more. But what I can see is here, actually, here is actually from OTX, from the Open Threat Exchange, something against it that tells me, hey, this could be a problem. This is actually related to WannaCry. If I now open up this page, it will give me actually the indicator of compromise to WannaCry, and it helps me understanding what's going on in the background. So, for example, if I take this icon, this is now from our threat intelligence team, I can just go into it and identify a little bit more about it. Now, if this is a WannaCry indicator or any ransomware indicator, you might want to isolate the system. So by sending this out to the team, maybe it's a production server that you said, hey, this is going on at the moment, I need to isolate the system. That buys you the time and also the confidence on the other side that you're doing the right things. Now, we're jumping here into the really bad stuff straight away. Let's go back a little bit to the dashboard for a moment and identify a little bit more where can we help. So if I go back here on the 24 hours view, this gives you a good idea. If you come in the morning and have a look, you would see here environmental awareness, reconnaissance probing, delivery of an attack, exploit installation, and system compromise. And you probably heard that in lots and lots of other presentations again, the kill chain approach. And that's where we're really helping. We're helping on every little spot that is important to be proactive, but also when I have to react, being in a position that I can make actually an educated decision instead of just jumping the gun. So looking at this here, for example, the environmental awareness, that would be my indicators of compromise on my own system / in the vulnerabilities. Reconnaissance and probing, that will be scans from the outside against my system. So clearly I can see now here, if I have a vulnerability, I can exploit it. But before I can exploit it, I need to identify a gap how to get in there. So that helps you understanding this. A delivery of an attack will then actually tell you, okay, somebody downloaded something, maybe an email arrived with a known email address. And we can get this information by collecting data from your mail gateway, for example, data from your firewalls, from your switches, from your critical environment components, from your antivirus. We've seen often that an antivirus maybe pops up something and says like, hey, I found something, but I couldn't clean it up. That's one way you want to know that you work with it. Or maybe you see a message saying your Cisco ASA or any other product is saying, oh, I see a callback, I blocked it. You're saying like, oh, you did a great job. Actually, it falls under the system compromise because it actually did it 15, 20, 30 times in a few minutes. That is not anymore a good situation. That is a situation where you want to investigate this. And by doing so, by following up on those things, building this routine out and getting the email out saying to you, hey, as a notification, this is now a high-level alert, you just go into it and just work it. And if you have to work those things, and I keep it simple for today, you go into this, here's the CNC communication, you click on the CNC communication, you get straight away a description, what can I do, what are the recommendations. Now we have something that's called AlienVault apps, and with AlienVault apps, I can create now responses. Now this could be Palo Alto, can be many other different tools, and I could just go in there and say like, okay, please, for this alarm, take the alarm destination and tag that with a tag name. Now my Palo Alto can understand, okay, I need to block that. If it is a Cisco umbrella, it would help you to do a DNS block actually on outside level. So it helps you doing this. You can automate those responses. It helps you actually applying information on it, saying, hey, this is in progress, this is closed, this is pending, who's working on it, and I can close out or work those alarms. This makes it much easier to respond to a situation, but more importantly also you have now actually getting more information on the system, because anything you can see here you can filter and put into a report. And it just generated a few sample reports here. For example, here we have a VCP flow log. It's similar to the network IDS log, but this is now based, for example, on AWS. If you're running AWS, you can't install a standard network IDS. So by collecting the right data, we can still apply Cicada rule-like intelligence and just work on it and say like, oh, this is maybe something. Now in this case, it is all except it's very positive news, but you can see here I can identify rejected traffic, or I can say like, oh yeah, this rejected traffic has this particular IP address or anything against it. PCI, sorry, NIST. Yeah, we petitioners and NIST, and of course we have multiple reports against NIST. You get an idea what is the severity of the situation here, again, about vulnerabilities, and also which are my top assets with the most vulnerabilities. A quick report to bring to the team. You can make it by asset groups again. Just bring it back to the team and say, like, hey, guys, you know what, you're my developer team. I know you have to work sometimes with some technology that is a little bit older for legacy purposes and all those things. But can we make sure that we keep that in an isolated network and don't have it anymore in the IP range where we have actually public access and so on. So you can help identifying problems, and you can also address problems with the team lead or the manager of the team and say, like, hey, you're still using this older software. Is it not time by now that we just maybe move on and become a little bit more secure? Very important, PCI. Lots of, I don't know, but I think a few of you at least would be in the position to do PCI and need to work with PCI, so we can help with this. Actually, if I just show you, this is just a quick report, sample report for the last 90 days on asset scans and a general report on whatever happens, so invalid user usage, failed passwords, received disconnect, and so on. Different kind of behaviors, asset scans discovered, so somebody tried to actually from a system to scan all your assets. In this case, it was an internal to internal, but it could be also an external to internal. So all this information, quick available to give you an idea, helping you with your security, but also with your compliance. And that would lead at the end to GDPR. We will be very soon one of the first companies that certified themselves against GDPR and will bring in this reporting back into our product. The reporting would be here. We have currently the compliance reporting for PCI, NIST, and HIPAA in here. We will give you ISO very soon, and GDPR will pop up at some stage here, probably before May. With GDPR is always a problem. What is GDPR? What is relevant to me? I think if you take what Javvad said at the very beginning throughout this presentation, what is important? Focus on a set of data. Don't overkill yourself with data. Work one section after the other. Identify the assets, group the assets up, and start group by group to improving your network, improving your posture, and that will help you bringing down the amount of alarms. And at some stage, you will see a view that looks better than this, not just having up the system compromised, but also going to the delivery of attack, reconnaissance program, and reducing it and bringing the right pieces in place. Now, I don't know how we are for time because, unfortunately, yeah, I think we are good for time. Do we want to move on to the Q&A session?
I think that's a good idea. Let's move on to the Q&A session. Thanks for that, Andy.
Perfect. Let me just change the screen.
Okay, so if you have the Q&A box on your screens, folks. So if you have any questions, just type it in there. I will read them out and let Andy answer them.
Yeah, of course. Now, while we were maybe waiting for our first question coming in, a question that I very often hear when I'm demoing the product is, oh, can you help with file integrity monitoring? And yes, we can. Actually, you can help yourself very easily by activating actually the file auditing on the operating system and just push the data into us, and we will then help you identifying problems.
Cool. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions coming in. These are more products related, so I'm going to throw them over your way, Andy.
Perfect.
So first question is just about cloud environments, and they're asking, like, you know, which cloud environments do you actually support? Is it Amazon, Azure, anything else?
So it is currently Amazon and Azure, and we're also including other products over our AlienVault apps like Office 365, Gmail, by building collectors, because it's what we're working over API, ConnectWise, many other products, and we're building this out day by day.
Cool. Okay. Good stuff. Next question is, what's the licensing model for the product? Again, I'll leave that to you.
Yeah, the licensing model is actually very straightforward. We're working in data consumption. So USM Anywhere is based in the cloud in London. So you spin up your own environment there at the end, or we spin it up for you. It's a SaaS model. And the first thing that happens is we have you scoping it, and it is scoped by tiers. First tier is 250 gig data consumption, and it goes then up step by step to 500, 1 tera, 1.5 tera, and so on. Now, you can actually choose between hot storage of 30 days up to 90 days. And that gives you actually the time frame. If you want to focus first on just security, I would recommend to start with the 30 days off. If you want to go to compliancy, you will be very fast in the 90 days area, and then you can just use this onward. All the relevant data, the raw data, will be stored for 12 days, for 12 months. Sorry.
Cool. Thank you. Okay. The system looks very comprehensive, but also that a small team of security experts would be required to manage it. Looking at the dashboard, there were thousands of alerts. Is this just example data or what you typically see?
So very first, most customers don't see exactly that picture because it is a test environment, so we will have more alarms, especially in there. Events, you will see thousands, but let us filter that out for you with the threat intelligence and the correlation rules that we give you. An average customer normally will be very surprised how easy the product is to use. When we start off with customers, they have a classic curve, so you get the new tool in. Of course, that's a new toy for the IT team, so they're working a little bit more with it, they're learning it. And there's a slight peak in workload at the beginning because you see what's going on. But as soon as they get it under control, it goes extremely down and it will be much less workload.
Cool. Thank you. And does AlienVault offer tips on how to resolve the issues identified?
Yes, actually, we help with it. I might not have shown it correctly, and feel free to pop into our colleagues here in Softcat for a deeper demo. But there is actually a description and a recommendation field with every alarm. And also, when you're clicking for the vulnerabilities into the exact vulnerability, we will bring you to OTX, and in OTX it has all the relevant links to the bug report, but also to, for example, Microsoft, Linux, and websites, or Adobe, whatever the vulnerability is, and you can get from there the necessary patches or steps.
Cool, thanks. Okay, so I think we've got time for a couple of more questions quickly. How many people would be required to run USM on a day-to-day basis, typically?
That depends, of course, on the size of the company. But an average company on a day-to-day basis, I would say one person can run it by themselves. It will be not even a full day. After it's installed and fine-tuned, it runs by itself, and you just need to identify the right moments, like the system compromise or so on. So you maybe log in the morning, have a quick look what happened, have some notification for the really critical stuff set up, and then just, on a daily basis review what's going on in the morning or in the evening or both. And then, like once in a week, like on Friday, just do the weekly review quick. Respond, of course, to all your notifications when something happens that needs to be worked with, and then have your monthly vulnerability review.
Cool, good one. I think it's also worthwhile just bringing up that USM has many capabilities built into it. So it's not just the fact that you don't need many people to run it on a day-to-day basis, but also it's actually a combination of many products all tightly integrated together that you're managing in one. So there's double benefit on the efficiencies of how you can leverage it.
Yeah, actually, you made a very good point. Don't forget, you have vulnerability assessment, you have the asset discovery, we do the behavior monitoring. You get actually for on-prem environments also a network IDS function. In the cloud, we do that over flow monitoring. And then the SIM capability that brings all this together with whatever you're getting in there.
Cool. Okay, so I think we'll make this the last question. It's how long does it take to configure the product? Does AlienVault help with this?
Yes. So it depends always on which tier and contract you're taking. We have, of course, a post-sales team here, a customer excellence team that helps you with all questions. But installing the product is very straightforward. It takes about half an hour to download probably the image, install it on your Hyper-V, or use it in the marketplace. Within 45 minutes, you're up and running and collecting the first data. If you have questions in a trial situation, you can trial the product, of course. My team will be here to help you with any questions. And of course, there's then our fabulous tech support team that in many cases just goes the extra mile just to make sure that you see what you need to see.
And we also have like training as well available for staff that want to get trained up on the product and certification. So.
Yes, absolutely. Maybe that is a good thing to mention. We have 2 trainings at the moment available for the product. Training number 1 is the maintenance and installation training, and training number 2 is the incident response training. And I think the incident response training is, even for someone that has already some experience, really interesting, because you see how to use the product and how to configure the product to identify the right threats and just bring it back home, and how to respond it. And you get some tips and tricks in general. Or when you see something like this, or when you see this kind of behavior, look here and here, and you will see what needs to be done.
Cool. Fantastic. Thank you for that, Andy, and right on time. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending. We hope that you found it useful. As always, you can always get in touch with your Softcat account manager and find out more, or you can get in touch with us directly, however you choose. And with that, we'd like to thank you again, and have a good day.